What if I told you? Stupidity isn't what you think it is. It's not about low intelligence or lack of education. It's something far more dangerous. A force, a virus of the mind, a silent contagion that turns rational people into echo chambers. Good intentions into blind obedience, and once brilliant minds into agents of destruction. This isn't just speculation, it's a pattern, one we've seen again and again in history, in psychology, and maybe in ourselves. Picture this. A Nobel-winning scientist starts promoting wild conspiracies. A thoughtful teacher repeats beliefs that contradict everything they once taught. A loving parent makes choices that suddenly put their child in danger. These aren't villains. They aren't madmen. They are people like you and me. People who, under pressure, surrendered the most sacred part of themselves, the ability to think. The terrifying truth: the collapse of civilization may not come from evil, but from unconscious compliance, not from tyrants, but from millions of ordinary people who stop asking questions, people who trade their minds for the comfort of agreement. And when that happens, logic no longer matters. Truth no longer matters. All that remains is the illusion of certainty, reinforced by the very systems that were meant to protect us. This is not a rant, not a lecture, not an insult. It's a warning, psychological, spiritual, and societal. Because if you've ever looked around and thought, something feels deeply wrong, like minds are closing instead of opening, like thought itself is disappearing, you're not crazy. You're just seeing the real enemy, and it doesn't look like what you expected. We like to believe that intelligence will protect us, that the smarter we are, the safer we are from deception. But what if? That's the lie. What if intelligence isn't a shield, but the first thing that gets hijacked? In 1961, psychologist Stanley Milgram conducted a now infamous experiment. Volunteers were told to administer electric shocks to strangers just because an authority told them to. The shocks weren't real, but the screams were. Still, 65% of participants continued. Why? Because they were told to. These weren't evil people. They were teachers, engineers, parents, educated, capable, and, for a moment, unthinking. This is the flaw in the illusion. Intelligence doesn't guarantee independence. It often creates more elaborate excuses for surrender. The smarter someone is, the better they are at rationalizing the lies they've already chosen to believe. The real danger isn't stupidity as we define it. It's functional stupidity, the decision to stop thinking critically. When thinking becomes inconvenient, what we're facing isn't a failure of IQ, it's the breakdown of moral and cognitive resistance. Because when systems reward obedience and punish dissent, intelligence bends to survive. And suddenly, truth becomes something we avoid, especially if it threatens our comfort, our reputation, or our belonging. This isn't a bug in the system. It is the system, and it thrives, not despite our intellect, but because of it. In 1943, a man sat alone in a German prison cell, awaiting execution. His name was Dietrich Bonhoeffer, a theologian, a philosopher, a resistor, and above all, a witness. He didn't just watch a dictatorship rise. He watched a society willingly give up its mind. Bonhoeffer wasn't obsessed with evil as most people are, not with villains or monsters. What disturbed him most was how ordinary people, educated, even spiritual, began repeating absurdities, endorsing violence, praising leaders who shattered everything they once believed. He saw professors quoting propaganda, priests justifying brutality, scholars abandoning truth for slogans. And from that silent place, he wrote something haunting. Against stupidity, we are defenseless. He wasn't talking about ignorance. He meant something deeper, a willful blindness that no logic can touch. He noticed that evil always invites resistance. It creates opposition. But stupidity, it persists because it believes itself to be good. That's what Bonhoeffer saw, and that's what we still struggle to admit. The biggest threat to truth isn't always lies, and the biggest threat to morality isn't always hate. Sometimes the most dangerous person is the one who's stopped thinking, but still believes they're doing good. That terrified Bonhoeffer, and it's what he died trying to warn us about. We've spent centuries dissecting evil, studying its causes, its motives, but Bonhoeffer offered something radical. He said, evil is horrifying, but at least it feels wrong. People know when they're doing harm, even if they justify it. But stupidity? It doesn't feel wrong. It feels right. It smiles, it prays, it obeys. And that's what makes it so deadly. Evil corrodes from the outside in, but stupidity, it hollows you from the inside out. A man doing evil might still have a conscience, but a man possessed by borrowed beliefs, by blind certainty, no longer hears his inner voice. He becomes a mouthpiece, not for truth, but for whatever power is loudest. Not because he's cruel, but because he's convinced he's righteous. And here's the part no one wants to hear. Stupidity is not a fixed trait. It's not about how smart you are. It's about how easily you surrender your mind. That's why it spreads. That's why it lasts, because it wears the mask of virtue. And no one wants to admit they mistook darkness for light. Stupidity isn't born, it's engineered. By systems, by culture, by overload. In a world that rewards outrage over reflection, certainty over curiosity, and speed over understanding, thinking becomes a liability. So people stop. Bonhoeffer saw it in Nazi Germany. But today, it's global, it's digital, and it's designed. We live inside a machine built to hijack your attention. Social media isn't here to make you wise. It's here to keep you scrolling. And what grabs you isn't wisdom, it's emotion, simplicity, tribalism. A headline that enrages you will travel faster than a truth that challenges you. A meme that flatters your bias will spread louder than a nuanced thought. This isn't a flaw. This is architecture. Stupidity isn't just accepted, it's monetized, because when you're tired, overwhelmed, and drowning in information, you don't look for truth. You reach for what's loud, what's easy, what feels right. And those in power, they don't have to suppress truth anymore. They just have to make it inconvenient. Economists have a term for this: rational ignorance. When learning the truth is harder than staying unaware, we choose not to know. We scroll. We simplify. We shut down. Not because we're lazy, but because we're exhausted. And that's how stupidity becomes a survival strategy. Bonhoeffer didn't name it, but he saw it. People weren't giving up their minds because they were evil. They were giving them up because they were overwhelmed. And when that overwhelm lasts long enough, stupidity becomes systemic. It spreads, not from ignorance, but from exhaustion.